So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through, what FME is really quickly, and then we'll get to the future stuff, because that's kind of where I live, and that's probably what you would all like to learn about. So before I start, anybody new to FME? Been using it less than a year? No? Okay. Well, there we go. So then we're going to go really quickly through this. But as I go through it, I'll sort of highlight some of the changes in direction we're taking with SAFE, how we're expanding what we're doing. Okay, this is us. I had great hair, just so you know. And the older I get, the greater it was. So there you go. So, yeah. So just some quick agenda, blah, blah, blah. And there we go, just so we have one when you get the deck later. So, yeah, so people ask, how did we come up with the name Safe Software? Because we all know there's no such thing as software that's safe, right? And so way back in 1993, Dale Lutz and myself, I was teaching at the BC Institute of Technology in computer science, and Dale was working at MDA, and this proposal from the government came out that was to move data in and out of this format called Spatial Archive and Interchange Format, SAIF. And it looked a lot like XML. And anybody who follows me knows I just love XML. So I got on the phone to Dale and I said, this thing's going to take over the world, this SAIF. So we're going to form a company and we're going to build software for it. And we're going to call the company Safe. We got safe.com for about $50. We should have got coca-cola.com, all those domains.com if we had really good vision, but we don't. And so our first logo had Safe, and the shadow was an SAIF. I made that myself, and using high-end Word, and we thought it was the greatest thing ever. Well, XML came along, SAIF, went into the sunset, but the data model that we had to build to support SAIF was pretty much the same one we have now. It was really dumb underneath. It knows how to move data, but none of the transformers. The pipeline itself is data agnostic. It doesn't know anything about the data. The smarts is in the transformers, the things along the pipeline. And so that's how we came up with Safe Software, safe.com. And because people sometimes they say, does it stand for anything? And the best I could come up with is spatial access for everyone, but hey, it doesn't really work. So anyway, but so that was in 1993. We did a few formats, and then as time went on, we found we were really lucky because data only became more important. It seemed so we added more formats, and data became more important. And so then a couple years ago, the Economist had a whole article on how data was the most valuable thing. And people say, wow, you guys had such great vision. We didn't have any vision. We were just lucky. We were two technologists who happened to solve this one thing because this SAIF was going to overtake the world, remember? And then it turned out that, hey, nobody else was doing this with spatial data. And so we just kept adding more and more and more. And we always followed the data. We build data pipe. And so if you're building data pipe, you go to where the data is, right? And that's still today, that's what we do. So there you go. Yeah. So the challenge has always been you have data in many silos. How do you communicate across them? Some of you remember that for a while we talked about having this we'd get all our data into one repository. We're just going to, from no matter where it was in the organization, we're going to pour it into one big master database, and then all the applications were going to talk to this database, and it was going to be just beautiful. And we don't talk about that anymore, because there's too much data. It's being collected too quickly. And so now we've kind of, abandoned this whole notion of bringing all the data together. But we'll talk a little bit later about data gravity. Data gravity is real, and you'll see some of the things we're doing about that when we talk future stuff. Okay, so now the model is leave the data where it naturally resides, its natural habitat, and then build APIs or ways to connect to it so you can pull it together and make decisions that way. And that's really what FME is all about. You'll also notice that SAP, this one down here, isn't spatial. So what we're seeing is, for years we worked on the hard stuff, the 3D, the 2D, the CAD, the BIM, all this stuff. And we carried the attribution along just because geometry without any attributes doesn't really have much value. But now we're expanding beyond the mapping, beyond the GIS, into the general IT. And really, it's the same problem, except they don't have the geometry, right? And so now we're starting to compete with the Informaticas of the world, the Alteryxes of the world, the Del Boomies, and those sorts of folks. And people look at FME, they go, why is FME so cheap? Well, we grew up in the GIS and the mapping, and those folks don't have big, huge budgets, right? A few zeros, or at least one zero's been chopped off. And so as we grow, and obviously we leave that value prop, and so that's kind of where we're going, kind of exciting. Our mission has always been, and this is why we work with data, to help you maximize the value of data, and that's as simple as that. The only reason you get FME is because you want to do something with your data to help you make decisions. That's it. And so that's what we do. We talk about it safe. If your data is not flowing, if it's just sitting in the database, you're not getting any value. You're only getting value out of it when your data is flowing. So we have this, our booth says, powering the flow of data. If you know what FME is, it means something. If you have no idea what FME is, you go, no idea what that is. So we got to rethink the booth, but anyway, that's another side. Okay. So right now we've been doing this for 25 years. I was in my 20s when I started this. 10,000 organizations use FME. If we don't count the data interop, Esri has a tool called the Data Interoperability Extension. It is FME. They've deployed it in over 30,000, so you would have those two together, it'd be 40,000. But we only count FME. And we have 150 partners worldwide. Safe, we build the product. We support partners, we support users, but we don't do services. We leave that to our partners. And in the early days, we did do services, but then we found out we were competing with our partners, and that's really a tough way to build a business. So, yeah, and this has worked really well. So, so as you know, connect to data. And if you come to us, get FME, and we don't connect to a data source, it's like kind of an easy answer, right? Can you help me? No. And then, but come to us anyway, because we have a team of, that's kind of my humor, it's Canadian humor, I know, it can be dark, because we have a team of developers, and all we do is we're adding new formats, right? Adding new formats, improving new formats, adding new formats, and until we start, they're all jostling for position, so you letting us know about a new format. Remember, we followed the data. We just did 12D, which we're going to talk about, and again, that was because people came to us and said, geez, it would be really nice if you did 12D. We didn't even know what 12D was. We were kind of scared. We thought maybe it was 4 times as hard as 3D. But anyway, so, and then you transform it and you automate it. And we're going to talk about that. So it's all about the format, right? Being able to connect all these data sources and then work with them. Okay. And this is where we really shine. No other, we're going against other enterprise data integration platforms, but none of them can touch us as far as the supported data types. They'll do tabular, they'll do XML, they'll do database, but they won't do, BIM, 3D, web, all these different, and we continue to add more. And you can see as the time goes on, in the last year we've added, AI and ML. You're going to see more of that as we work to be able to, embrace all the amazing web services that are being put out by the big cloud vendors. AR and VR is a new way to look at your 3D data. Indoor mapping, with Apple's IMDF that just was proposed to the OGC to be a standard today. And so you're just seeing all these different types of data that we support. Some of our partners, you recognize a lot of them. This one here, we're working with on the whole IoT side of things for the real-time data. So so you're going to see that because that's another new type of data that we're processing. You can do it with FME now, but it's kind of buried. You have to know what switches to turn and things like that. So transformation is key, right? It's not so much, okay, I can read the data, so now what? Okay, now how do you combine the data together? How do you bring different data sets together to derive new information to help you make your decisions, right? Lots of fires going on around here. We have the same thing in BC. How can you pull your infrastructure together with the fires to figure out, where you need to get people or where you need to get people out and how are they going to get out and all these sorts of things. You can measure the slope, how fast the fire going to go, because fire just goes really fast uphill, and so you don't want to be on the wrong side of uphill when you're fighting a fire. and lots of different things where you can start to really help you make a better decision about how are you going to do things, right? And then, of course, the nice thing about Workbench is you don't have to be a programmer to do it, right? And that's a big thing. Yeah, you have to understand your data, but you can understand your data as you're authoring. So, yeah, automation. Who here's using FME Server 2019? Awesome. Yeah, we added automations. That was a big change. Until then, automations really was the scheduler. And so we've really taken that to the next level. Yeah. So any industry that has data, more and more, you can see utilities, government, energy, those are the big ones. But as we're moving beyond spatial into new areas, now some folks don't even know what spatial data is. We have a company, for example, that is a manufacturer, and they're using FME to get data from within their facility to figure out what's going on and how to do it better. Yeah. Okay, some customers, some ones you recognize there. McDonald's China.
Yeah, McDonald's China is using their current locations, but then they're also pulling in their business intelligence information just to figure out, where to find a new location. So making those informed decisions for their business in China. Another one is the Weather Network. They're tracking lightning strikes in Canada, and FME Server receives those messages, and they will, depending on the severity and how they analyze, what's a severe lightning strike, is it a bunch of them or whatnot, then they'll, adjust notifications accordingly, and that's all using FME technology in the background too.
So now we talk about FME as a data integration platform. When we start talking to customers, we talk about the whole platform. It can, you author your workflows on desktop, but then automation is really where it brings tons of value to organizations, because now you don't have to have people babysitting it or. So who here has the whole platform? Desktop. Okay, most. Okay. And then of course FME Cloud is just FME Server in a hosted environment. It doesn't add anything special. We'll talk about that. Okay, so what's coming in 2020? Well, I got good news. And the good news is you're all invited to come to Vancouver.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Oh, right, this thing. Yeah, this is only here because it's recorded. Okay. So you're all, the wind's been taken out of my sails. Okay. So you're all invited to come to Vancouver. If you need a letter from me, just send me an email and I'll be happy to say, Billy Bob really needs to be at the FMEUC. If Billy Bob doesn't come, the whole event's going to be a failure. And so please send Billy Bob to Vancouver in June of 2020. So the call for presentations is open now. So
we love hearing from you guys. So if you guys have been working on any solutions, we love hearing from you guys. So whether it's you just submitting it on your own or you're not quite sure, maybe contacting your partner, contacting Locus, and you guys can work on a joint presentation. We also, we just love hearing from you guys and what you guys do with the product.
Yeah. And we expect about 1,000 people.
And June is our summer, and it's your winter.
Yeah.
So that's not more enticing. I don't know what else.
I'm sure June in Brisbane is super cold. Yeah. So you're going to want to come to Vancouver, and and they get some of that sunshine that you'll be really missing. Yeah. So we expect 1,000 people there, and it's really we do it once every 3 years. So we don't do it every year. We do it once every 3 years. We'll still do the world tour, of course, but this is a lot of fun. And it really is the user stories that are the fun part. Some of the things people do are crazy and scary. I'll never forget, I was in Michigan, and I was on the world tour, because I do the world tour too, and I was standing at the back of the room, and a customer goes up, and it was like Michigan Election, Authority or something like that. And I thought, well, okay. So he goes up and he talks about how they built workspaces and where they're using FME to collate all the election results for Michigan. And this was for the 2018, where anyway. And he says, so FME is bringing all those together, and it's great. It's an automated thing. I just click the run button, and it just does its thing, and it spits out all the results. And the guy goes, how do you know it works? He says, I just ran it. It just worked. And Michigan was one of those states that was, right, history. if Michigan had gone the other way, we might have a different world, right? We might be in an alternative universe. And then then he says, yeah, and I can't wait for 2020 because my workspace is ready, and I know I'm just going to click run, and it's just going to work. So there you go. So I was at the back of the room thinking, wow, this is super scary. Really, we should have a disclaimer that FME was not designed to be the backbone of democracy or something like that. So, yeah, but just amazing things that people do with it. Yeah. So that's the FME UC 2020. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. And okay, so now some new stuff on desktop, which is Workbench and the Data Inspector. A few things are coming, but this is one of the big ones. Is this whole idea of workspace link tracing. And the idea here is you might have a big workspace and maybe you want to know for a particular output, what are all the inputs that contributed to that? Maybe you're getting some bad data, you don't know where is this data coming from? Now with this, you'll really be able to easily identify where it is. You'll also be able to see natural partitions in your workspace. Maybe you've got a big workspace and you want to see if I can break this up into 2 workspaces, or just see how everything's connected. You'll be able to click on a link and go downstream or upstream. And so once you start playing with this, you're like, wow, this is really cool. Also, what we're going to do in the future is when you publish this workspace to server, now that we're actually doing network tracing, we'll be able to look and say, do you want to publish this workspace so it could be parallelized? Because if you're doing a big data lift and you have a workspace that has natural partitions, if you ran it on a server with multiple engines, you would actually be able to load it in faster in many cases if FME is a bottleneck. So that's one of the things. So that's pretty exciting. We're also re-architecting all the published parameters, but this isn't really, if we do it properly, you'll never even know, right? And the idea here is that we're doing this so that when you're able to create transformers, packages for FME Hub, you'll be able to create interfaces that are as good as or as bad as ours. See, that's the idea. Some of our interfaces are good, some of them are really bad, but you'll be able to do this, do the same thing, right? And so that's and we also would need this because, as you'll see, we have Workbench Web coming, which is very not full-blown Workbench. That won't happen, but you'll be able to do minor edits. Yeah. But the thing that really excites me is this whole notion of data-aware transformer dialogues. Right now, when you're using Workbench, and I know everybody here works with XML. Who doesn't? And you use, your favorite transformer called the XML flattener, right? Show of hands, whose favorite transformer is the XML flattener? Yeah, it was unanimous. And when you do that, it's got this thing, attributes to expose, right? And you got to type them, right? That is just a real pain in the butt, because if you mistype them, then FME Workbench thinks they're there, but they're not really there, and it's time consuming. You got to either log them and then copy and paste them over. But we have this caching thing, and so we're going to start to use that in the authoring experience. So if you're working with data in a cached environment, does people use caching? Yeah. Now, Workbench knows what the data is, so really, it should give you the option. You say attributes to expose. It should pop down a list of all the attributes, and you should just be able to select them. So that's what you're going to be able to do. It would also be nice if, since you got this cached data, if you could look at an attribute and say, show me all the values of that, right, as you're authoring. So then as you're authoring, you can start to understand the data. Because what do you do right now? You run the whole thing. You look at the output. Oh, okay, that's what's in there. You run the whole thing. You look at the output, right? It would be nice if you could do that without running. And and also what you're going to be able to do is the moment you configure a transformer, it'll just run. So, you have a workflow going, you add a new transformer, you click OK. Why do you have to go and click run if you're in the middle of constructing it? Yeah, caching was nice, but still, that's an extra. I got to move my arm up there, I got to click it. And it would be nice if we just run. So that's what you're going to do.
We like things to be less clickalicious and less moving.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's definitely in our users' best interest to do that.
Yeah. So, okay, server. This is where I live. So the server's going to get more time from me just because this is where I live. And what's that?
Because it's demo world.
Yeah, that's right. So server. In 2019, you got to get my years. I get my years all mixed up because, yeah. Anyway, in 2019, we added automations, and automations were great. They enabled you to have an event and run workspaces in order. But that's all you could do, right? Yeah, you could run 3 at once and one after another in a big long chain, but you couldn't actually use the thing the workbench figured out to actually control what happened in your workflow. So for 2020, and it's in the beta now, we have this thing called the Automations Writer. Here's a workspace, and I've added an Automations Writer, and yeah, I'm using collapsible bookmarks, so we'll just humor me. What I often do when I'm building things is I'll have a validate section that uses a creator. And in this one, I had to do some pretty sophisticated validation of the input. So I actually have a creator create before the other one, put it in a custom transformer, a collapsible bookmark, and then I just, I leave it there, right? So, and I'll even publish it this way, because every once in a while, I'll be working with Serve, and all of a sudden my workspace gets invalid data. It's really nice if the workspace ends because it's telling me it's gotten invalid data, rather than get some really obscure other error, and then I got to go through it, and I go through it, and I go through it, only to realize much later, after many hours of work, that the input data was invalid, right? And so that's that. But all this is doing is it's doing, I got this attribute range filter, and it essentially takes in a state. So the input is the state of, say, California, and or Idaho, and then it connects to a database, looks up how many people are in Idaho, and if I run it, it says that Idaho, let's close this, Idaho is small, right? If I ran it again, and I say California, CA, it would say California is humongous, okay? There you go, based on number of population. So when I put this back into my automation, now you can see that depending on what happens, different workflows are going to happen in my automation. So now I can actually I can control my automation from my workspace. Other use cases would be, maybe I have an ID coming in. I want to join that ID to a database and grab information out of the database to enrich the message so that the message can go to the downstream. So you can start to do things like this. So this is, it's in the beta now. And this is really, really huge. So if I go over here, you'll see it. So I have an automation, manage this filter states. And you can see that this, as I click on here, I can actually access the values from the messages. So that was a workspace, humongous feature type, state, population, whatever, right? So now it's totally connected. So that's, yeah. So that's the first big thing, and we wanted to get it in for 2019, but the iPhone didn't have copy paste. You might remember that, and yeah. So the next thing is data-driven parallel processing. Okay, so this one's an interesting one. In 2019, when an event happened, you could have some parallelism going on. You could draw 3, lines out of your automation and say, I want to do this, 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 and this at the same time. But it was all at authoring time. And so what we've done in 2020, again with the automations writer, is we've broken that one message in, one message out. So if I look at this workspace, every once in a while a schedule comes along. Let's say it's California. I do all this processing for the state, and then now I want to do processing for every county. Well, there's 60 counties in California, and so rather than just bury it in there, I want some parallelism, so I output a message using the FME Server Automations Writer, and I get 60 of those. Okay? And then for each county, I'd process the county, but then I also want to do processing for each census block, and so I output those, so now I would have 1,000 of those. So let's look at that. Yes. Okay, so now we're going to go back here. I have an automation running. Okay, there they are. And if I look at the jobs in my queue right now, queued, and now I'm over here, so nothing's in the queue. I go back to my automation. I go manage. Okay, this one's running, data-driven parallelism. And the thing I've also done is I've assigned these workspaces to a particular queue. So if I go here, the county ones go to the county queue, and the block ones are going to the block queue. Okay. So I've done that, I've parallelized that, because maybe I'm submitting a whole bunch of jobs. Maybe I don't want them run till after everybody goes home, or maybe I want to use some other functionality of FME that we haven't talked about yet to do that. Okay. And but if I look at my engines, you're going to see that I only have one engine, and it's not actually even on, there's nothing on the block or county. There's no engines assigned. So, okay. So now that's sort of the setup. So now I'm going to go back to this data-driven parallelism, and that's easy for me to say. And I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to say trigger, because we don't want to wait till 2:05. We missed that. Okay, so now it's triggered. So now what happened? Well, it ran California, and so it did its processing state, and then it submitted 60 jobs. So if I go over here to jobs, queued, now you can see there's 60 jobs that are basically just sitting there waiting for an engine, right? And so now we're going to have to come back to that in a minute. But you can see what's going to happen. And when each of those runs, they would submit jobs for all the blocks within that county. Okay. And this is all in 2020 beta now. Okay, the next thing we've added, kind of related, is this notion of auto-scaling engines, right? So we've added this ability to this, data-driven parallelism. But now wouldn't it be cool if, based on the load, you could actually spin up more engines, right? And who wouldn't want more engines? Who here does not want more engines? See, nobody put up their hand. Everybody wants more engines. And so in this scenario, there was up to 6 engines, and then when the workflow came down, it went down. And the way we, I got it. Okay, I almost gave it away again. And so wouldn't it be nice if you could watch a queue, and as work came in, you'd spin up engines, and then you could spin them down, right? Of course, you buy your engines, and so why would you do that? If you bought let's just say you bought 100 engines, you're just going to leave them sitting there, probably in today's model. Okay, but there might be a different model we're going to talk about. Yeah. Okay, so that's the next thing. Because now what we're doing with all this data-driven parallelism is the workloads on your server may not be, really easy to predict. Okay. So in 2019, we added this thing called FME Server Apps. Has anybody played with that? A few? Yeah. And what people wanted was they wanted this ability to make the workspace to hide FME Server behind it. They said, I'd really like anybody in my organization on a workspace, but I don't want them to know it's FME Server. I want it to look like any other page within my organization, and so that's what we did. And then, of course, immediately we did that, and they said, oh, that's really great. Now I want authenticated apps, because now I want to create an app for my finance or my planning or this group or that group. I don't want it just hanging out on the internet, and anybody who finds the URL could actually just do whatever they want. And so that's coming in 2020. The other thing is, maps with apps. So I was visiting a city in Canada, and we were talking about all the things they do, Maximo this with FME, and Tririga this with FME, and CityWorks this with FME. And then they had a map, and I said, that's a really nice map. I'm paraphrasing slightly. I'm a little deeper than that. But anyway, I said, hey, that is a really nice map. And he said, whoa, I'm getting excited. Sorry, that happens. And he said, well, all this map does is it just collects parameters for my workspace. It would be really nice if you guys would put maps on your FME Server apps. And I'm like, sometimes people say the most obvious thing, almost like, surely you guys were thinking about this. So I said, that is like the most obvious and the best suggestion ever, And so we're doing it, right? And so now what people will be able to do is build nice apps like this. This is a pothole reporter. And you can see some of our, if you read it, you'll see some Canadian humor there. Because some places in Canada, they have 2 seasons. They have winter, and then they have pothole repair. And by the time they get all the potholes repaired, it's winter again. And you don't have that problem down here, I'm sure. But some places in Canada do. And so now we have a nice, you can see it's an FME server app. It's got the picture of the pothole there, and there's nothing about it that makes it look like it's FME. So that's what you're going to see in 2020 as well. Okay, so here we go. So if you think about all the things we've seen FME server apps, we've seen data-driven parallelism. And what are those things doing? They're kind of destroying the predictability of your server, particularly FME server apps. Let's say you make an FME server app for your organization, and you have 3 engines, and this app is super successful. From 9 till 11, let's say you're an organization of 1,000 people, everybody in the organization is using this FME server app, right? What do we know about web users? Super impatient, right? They click that OK button. If they don't hear anything, and a second later they're clicking it again, and then they just go, and then all of a sudden they get a response back, and they think, oh, it must have been the last click. Well, no, it was really the first. But anyway, now the server's going crazy. And so we have lots of people who are using servers who in the past they've said, oh, it'd really be nice if you guys could show me when my server's busy, when it's not busy, maybe dumping it out to a calendar and all this stuff. And we've looked at all this stuff. Well, how do you indicate a busy time that's like 500 jobs, each job taking 10 seconds in a calendar tool? It's tough. We're still trying to think about how we can give you a visualization of your server. But they're spending a lot of time spending out how to keep all their engines busy when really, why can't they just run the job when they want it, right? So that's kind of, and so then we're introduced this new thing called pay-as-you-go. We also, with the dynamic scaling, like we would love you all to buy 1,000 engines. John would love it if you'd all buy 1,000 engines, but that would be a tough sell. And but wouldn't it be nice if you could use 1,000 engines if you wanted to, but only pay for the work that you've done, right? Like right now, FME is servers sold by the highway model, right? In Brisbane, I don't know how many lanes you have. Let's say you have 8, right? Now that's great in the middle of the night. It's it works most of the time during the day, but but from 9 till whatever, or 8 till 9, there's just not enough capacity, and that's the way, right? So what Brisbane really needs is expandable highways, go up to 40 lanes and then down to 3. But that's essentially what this pay-as-you-go licensing is. Allows you to buy time, not engines. Now we're not getting rid of the old one because if you have 3 busy engines, you have 3 busy engines, and knock yourselves out. Okay, so the idea is supports this whole notion of dynamic engines. You can spin engines up, spin engines down. You pay for the work you've done, and more you're giving control of your load to your users, and so it's great for these bursty workloads. So if you want to try it, let us know. And right now we're in the data collection phase. So what does that mean? That means we give you time and for free, and then you use it, and then because we're trying to figure out how do we price this thing. It's got to have value for you, but we can't go broke, right? We could have some price. Everybody goes, wow, this is amazing. This pay-as-you-go licensing is the most amazing thing ever. And then John's standing on a street corner trying to get a new job and saves doesn't, and you go, wonder what happened. Oh, their pay-as-you-go pricing was an amazing deal. But on the other hand, if we put it too high, then it's like nobody wants it either. So we're not solving any problem. So that's, transparency, right? That's just what we're trying to do. Find the sweet spot. So so this is what it looks like, and you'll notice. I'll go back over here because we need pay-as-you-go because I got those 60 jobs just waiting there. So if I look at my server here, okay, now when you look at FME Server 2020, you're going to see this dynamic engine licensing is not enabled. And every time you look at that, it's going to hurt, right? Because we just hate not having full power. And so, so if you remember this URL, because
I can see John nodding over here. He's
right.
really sad.
So this is an FME server app, which I made. Maybe the graphics give it away, maybe not. I mock our marketing department every time I walk by. I go mock because they're going to make it look better. But we use this internally, and the idea is if I want some time, I just okay, and then I got to get my serial number over here. Okay. Yeah, okay, right here. And I put it in here. and then I can give myself, 1,000,000 hours, right? And that's it. I just click OK. And then now it's talking back to an FME server, actually, that's doing all this in the background. And there we go, completed. Now I go over here, and I simply say refresh license. And this is talking to an FME server in the background again, because, and did I click it? Oh, there we go. Look at that. Remaining credits, 1,000,000 hours, dynamic engines unlimited, right? So now what I can do is I can go over here. I'm running in Docker, so, and it was counties. It was this one here. So I can add 3 engines to my stack. They'll spin up. They'll talk to the FME core, and the FME core says I don't have any standard licenses, but you're welcome to join and be dynamic, and the engines are happy to do that. And so now
it's
I
a
have
lot
these
nicer interface on Windows to enable those dynamic engines if you're not running on Docker or on Linux. So might not have to do some scripting there.
And the REST API also can do that. So you can launch them through the REST API. And we'll talk about a metric in a minute. But so now if we look at what's going on, you can see they're all on the county. So now if I look at the jobs from that previous one and I look at what's queued, you can see, oh no, now it's the blocks. Because remember, the blocks were going, and there's like 900 of them. So I better go back over here. Whoops, better go back over here. And now we want to do this one. Okay. And so now we're going to go after the block. So we're adding engines to basically, imagining the workflow, right? So yeah, so that's how that all works. So if you want to try it, let us know. Happy to help you. Let John know. Ruby. Sometimes we call her Rosie, just so. But,
Don, did you want to show them what it looks like on the licensing, where you see that graphic of the engines? Just
great idea.
A good visual of where your engines are and what kind they are as well.
Right. So in the deployment status now, you can see ugliest interface we have. It's going to change. Okay. The colors aren't very good, and I'm not a color guy, but you can see these 3 are dynamic. You can see they're running a job, right? If we go back to here under licensing, you can see it's counting down, as it does. If I go back over to here, pay-as-you-go remaining report, this will tell us how much time as it calls back. It's probably still at 1,000,000. You can see that's me here. But if I go back to my server, the server will report on an hourly basis. I don't know. But if I click refresh, then that causes the server to check to see how much, if it has more time or whatever. And the side effect of that is it reports back. So now if I go over here to remaining report, you can see that it will have reported back the number. There I am there. I've burnt off 45 seconds of time. And that sort of thing. So that's the idea there. And the idea is, and there's system events that can tell you when you're getting low, how much you're burning, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so there we go. Anything else? Nope, okay. Yeah, so why? That's always a good question. We wanted something that gives you flexibility. It's complementary to the existing licensing. So we're not going to get rid of the old licensing. A lot of customers use it. You have a steady flow of 2 engines. That's, this thing you have to be, you want to really do testing, make sure you understand your workflow, right? Because you could get out of control, and you might be coming to us begging for forgiveness, that sort of thing. I had an email from a guy who says, I think I'm about to get divorced. So, I get a lot of emails, so I'm scanning my subjects. That's how and I'm like, oh, this is a good one. And it was a guy on server. He got on cloud. He got all excited, pulled out his credit card, launched the biggest instance we have. And it's a big, expensive beast. Played around, I guess, I don't know for how long, 5 minutes maybe, I don't know. But then he went to bed and forgot. Until basically he got the Visa bill. And I don't know if he has a history of buying a lot of FME or something. But he gave me this big, long, sad story, and so we just gave him his money back. But Amazon did not give us our money back, so so we had to eat a little bit there. But I don't want anybody saying FME made me, caused my wife to leave me or anything. That would just be terrible. So anyway, but with this, you'll notice that we're not charging you for infrastructure. We're only charging you for FME, right? And again, we're trying to get the pricing right and things like that. But you can see all the things now that are happening that are really impacting the load on FME. The other one is data streaming. We'll talk a little bit about that. But you might have a data stream that's getting a million messages every minute, like we have for CN Rail. And then a dedicated engine makes a lot of sense because the engine's really busy. But what if you get that horrible, 200 messages a minute, right? You don't really want to spin up a new engine for every single message because that puts a lot of weight on the system. But an engine's too expensive to really have it. I don't know what it is in Australia. In Canada, it's like $7,900 or something Canadian. To have it just sitting there almost idle, listening to messages and doing a bit of work, right? Or maybe it's super bursty. Maybe at some points during the day, it's getting a lot of messages, and then the rest of the day it's idle. With this, you only pay for the work that's done. You don't pay for, and then you can do it the way you want to do it and not being driven by, I'm going to do it this way only because it's cheaper, not because technically it's the way I need to do it. That's what we want. We always want you to be able to do things the way that they should be done and know that the cost is fair, not doing things the wrong way just because otherwise the cost kills you. So yeah. So give us feedback. If you try this, always give us feedback. Even if you do buy it, tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, yeah. It's too cheap. Anyway, so there you go. That was another one of my really work-based editing. So again, I could go over here and on all those, go to my automation even, find one, this one here with a workspace, and I can just right-click on it, and then I could say View Workspace, and now, you're in some, yeah, that's just me. I turn off so many cookies. But you can start to see that now you can see things. You'll be able to do minor edits. You'll be able to private parameters or tweak little, things like that. It's not going to have the full experience of desktop. And we're pouring more and more money into desktop with this, basically data science as you're editing and that whole thing. But sometimes you just want to make a small tweak. You know what the small tweak is. You don't want to have to download it, make the change, and then republish. You just like to do it right here. And that's really what it is. And the thing here we're really focusing on, again, is also around automations. What can we add to this so that when you're in the automations, if you need to make a small change, you can do it all on server. So that's what we're doing there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, enterprise dashboard integration. We'll go into large clients, and they have many enterprise applications. And again, this is us moving beyond the typical mapping, but into the IT infrastructure. Often they'll have enterprise dashboards where they'll be watching all their enterprise applications. And so what we've added to FME Server in 2019 is we added this whole open metrics API. So now with the REST API, you can see what's going on in server. And we've expanded that in 2020. So if I go to REST API, you'll see there's a metrics call here. Yeah, API and metrics. And I'll say run it, and it'll ask me for my password. Admin, whoops, better get lowercase. Admin, like everybody does. That's going to go away in 2020, so enjoy it. Yeah, and then you'll see now when I run it, you can see it's telling me all the things that are going on in my server. Right now it's pretty idle, but then this is how you could also use this endpoint to watch a queue, and then at that point use the REST API to fire up engines and that sort of thing. So yeah, so that's basically what it is. And this pay-as-you-go, we're going to use it for on-prem, in the cloud, and things like that. Because we have folks in the cloud who want to take advantage of spot instances on AWS. And our cloud, you can't do that, right? It's one box. It's there all the time. You're paying for capacity. Whether or not you use it in the cloud, it's the same thing. You're paying for it. But with spot instances, pay-as-you-go, you might want to spin up a whole bunch of engines, do a bunch of work, shut the AWS instances down, and you're only going to pay for the FME work to us. If you get your infrastructure cheaper or more expensive, that's between you and the cloud provider, not us. And so that's where we're going with that. Yeah. Yeah. More coming. We'll talk about remote engine. Server stream, you're going to see a lot about us in real time at the user conference. It's not going to make it for 2020.0, but at the user conference, you're going to see us demonstrating this. There's like IBM has the IoT Watson platform, and AWS is an IoT platform, and Azure and others. And how do you connect FME to them to process real-time data, right? So, and then more security features. So what's the idea with hybrid server architecture? Remember really early in the talk I said data gravity is important, right? In the old days, we would try to move all the data around to where it was most, maybe we try to move the data close to the processing. Those days are over. Now we have to move the processing close to the data. And anybody who's tried to, install FME server in the cloud and then maybe open a pipe and try to process data on-prem, or vice versa, you install FME server on-prem and you try to process data in the cloud, it just doesn't work. I mean, yeah, it'll work, but it's so painful, so slow, because the bandwidth and the latency are all going the wrong way, right? Latency is going up, bandwidth is going down. So the idea here is you'll be able to install FME server wherever you want, and then if you have some data in the cloud, you can launch an engine in the cloud, join that server core, and now that engine is part of your server, but using the queuing stuff of FME, you can move all the jobs that are hitting that data store there, and you'll get way better performance. And sometimes you can't choose, right? We have organizations that have multiple clouds, data on-prem, and data gravity makes it really hard to move everything to the cloud because there's some local processing you need to do, and if you put it in the cloud, now you're kind of trading. Now you got to have either a really big pipe with high speed, but which is not always realistic. Also, you might be using a web service where you have no control over where it is. We use Salesforce.com, and we do not have any control over where Salesforce puts it. We can find out. We can ask them. And then we can, when we want to work with it, is put an engine in the same data center way faster than if we just run it on-prem or in another data center, right? Of course it's faster, because within a data center they have high-speed fiber between all their machines. It's faster by accident, not because Salesforce is actually trying to do anything. And in some cases that can be significant. So the idea is with this is put engines wherever you want. It's also important when we start talking about IoT. Often you'll have devices off in a corner somewhere, and the communication back is not, high speed. And you don't want the device sending you every piece of information. Like, you don't want it to be saying, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. Can you imagine if you were, hanging out with somebody like that? I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. You kind of want them to tell you stuff that's significant, right? Like, I don't feel good. Oh, that's significant, but the other stuff, and it's the same kind of thing. Often you want to maybe put a time window around devices and send summaries back, or you only want to be notified about things that you've decided are interesting. And so, again, putting the engines where the devices are. Yeah, so, yeah. Oh yeah, FME engine. This is a thing that powers everything, right? Server, desktop. And so lots of new formats, 12D readings coming, Mapbox vector tiles, reading and writing, yay, and Revit floor plans. So, and there's probably other ones there that you see. So Revit floor plans, reading, this is all about the indoor mapping. More and more of the buildings that are being built today are using Revit or some other BIM tool. And so with the whole indoor mapping thing, it's important that we can easily extract floor plans, doors, and things like that. Yeah.
And I was just going to add a note saying with us adding more updates to both products, we want to hear from you. What don't you like? Don keeps preaching, I want to know what you don't like, because we want to make it better. So the more you are in contact with your partner, and it's really important for you guys, they will escalate it to us, and we'll either add new formats or, as Don is about to talk about, refine formats as well. So, yeah.
So the number 2 and number 1 format. So you can see, we're moving beyond the whole mapping. We're still doing the mapping. I got to be careful how I say that, right? Otherwise, people will leave thinking, wow, Safe Software is no longer doing the mapping format. So that's interesting. Yeah, and of course we are going to continue to do that, but Excel's now the number 2 format, rocketing up. Everybody has Excel spreadsheets, And anybody here actually look at an Excel spreadsheet, see the number on the bottom and wonder, I wonder if all the computations that gave me that number are correct, or we just like, nobody. There's actually a conference you can go to about all the bad decisions made with bad Excel spreadsheets, right? Because really there's a lot of computation going on. You can round up, you can round down, you can floor this, ceiling that. And then you get this number, you go, okay, well, there it is. It's in Excel, must be right. Yeah, anyway. So that's another side, but yeah, so Excel's really popular, shapefiles are really popular, and we've made them about 10 to 100 times faster in 2020. So again, just making...
I was going to say, I heard, I was at a conference once where they said, I think 20% of all Excel spreadsheets have got a calculation error in them.
That's kind of scary, actually. That was a nervous laugh. Yeah, that's funny, yeah. Some other upcoming formats that are not in 2020 yet that will make it. 12D writing. We did the reading first. We're working with them. We want to do the writing. And then you can see some other ones. You'll notice BigQuery GIS, Google BigQuery GIS. So they're adding spatial capabilities to Google BigQuery. And of course, FME is a natural one. Anything any database wants to get into it is data. And so by us reading and writing that, we'll be able to work with that. Snowflake database, probably it's a $3 billion company I'd never heard of. They're a data lake, and their claim to fame is they run natively on Azure, AWS, or Google. You pick your platform, and they'll run natively on it. And they're adding spatial in June of next year, so we're working with them to be part of that announcement. So we're making sure that when they announce it, FME's on stage, and everybody knows, hey, you want to get spatial data in and out of Snowflake, FME is the way to do that. So that's exciting too. And XML, FME release would not be complete without a lot of work done on XML. And and we're not disappointing in 2020. The generic XML driven by XSD files is hugely exciting, as I can tell. You guys are just going to go home and tell everybody in your family about how exciting that is. But that means you don't need data. You can just use the schema document as a way to read and write XML documents. And then WFS3, which is the latest OGC web feature service, but it's JSON-based. It's more REST-like, and so it's much easier to work with. So we're doing that as well. Yeah. And then connectors, and you're going to see some themes here. At SAFE, we always want to be, agnostic, right? And so in the past, if people looked at us, they may think, oh, those guys are AWS-centric, right? They did cloud in AWS. They do S3, SQS, SNS, things like that. But we're platform agnostic, so what we're doing is we're doing all of them the same, and we're working our way down the stack. So you can see Amazon Athena, that's their big data lake. Recognition and comprehend, that's the other thing you're going to see. On the world tour, we had some fun things we did with machine learning and AI on the laptop, which is kind of fun. You can take your laptop with you, but in the real world, you're probably going to want to, leverage the massive capabilities of Amazon, Google, and Azure, and so recognition and comprehend are there. SQS, of course, is their queuing system. On Azure, you can see the same thing, computer vision and text analytics, that's ML and AI there. And then blob storage is like their S3. File storage, and queue storage is like their SQS, okay? And similarly, whoops, did I get that? Yeah, I did, okay. And similarly for Google, we're doing the same thing. Pub sub is like their SQS, and then you can see their vision and language is their ML and AI stuff as well. And so good. And then Apache Kafka, we did that for Auckland, working with Locus. And that's a high-speed data streaming service. So now you can do Kafka, JMS, Kinesis, WebSockets, and others. Yeah. So that's another thing you're seeing. And then some new transformers. Proj 6 it used to be called Proj 4. It's basically the new reprojection library that all of the big vendors are funding. It's an open source. And then this is going to be the definitive way of doing projection systems around the world. It's called Proj 6 now. Proj 7 is about to come out, so we're probably just going to call it Proj. We're not going to have the 6. And it's really smart. It has this whole temporal thing because the continents, they won't sit, they're moving around, right? New Zealand and Australia are moving further apart, I hear. Yeah. Yeah. Canada's drifting into Asia. We're stuck with the U.S. They just won't let go. But anyway, that's a joke. Yeah, and so, but this has temporal. So because if you go down the street, and you take a location of the center line, and then you come back 10 years later, it's not the center line anymore, right? It's moved around. So that's the whole idea there. Also, a lot of FME. Who here cares about the North American datum correction files that we ship with FME? Not one person. Yeah, and the same thing in North America, we're shipping all the Australian ones. And so the idea with this is you just download it when you're using it one time, and then, because they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, more accurate, and so then when you're in Australia, you get the Australian ones, and away you go. Also, performance rewrite, the statistics calculator is about 1,000 times faster. And you might think, wow, that's impressive. But what you really should be saying is, wow, that old one must have really sucked. So it did. And so now we rewrote it, and so now it's way faster because we rewrote it in C++ rather than in some old ancient TCL language. And the buffer also is much faster and much more accurate, more robust, and things like that. And we care about performance. So if there's anything you're using where maybe you think, wow, it's fast, but if we know you're using it and you say, it'd be nice if you made this faster, that would be good. Or maybe you're using a transform and you go, wow, it's spending all its time in the dissolver. Let us know what you're using. Because again, we have a group that all they do is they rewrite our algorithms to be faster. And super smart people. And they really want to know where they should go next, because FME is this massive thing. And if we can target them better. When I think about performance, anything you do with FME, if you find it slow, let us know. We really take pride in that. Even the XML group, like one week I'll be reading their report. Oh, it was 4% faster. Next week it's 3%. Week after that it's 2%, 0%, 5%. But over a year, you start adding up this 3%, 2%, 4%, 5%, 6%. It starts to add up, right? And we have big performance test suites we run through, trying to make things faster while still making them correct. Yeah, I was in university, and I remember I went to my professor, and he was going on about stuff, and he talked about how fast his was. I said, mine's faster. And he says, yeah, but yours is wrong. He says, it's got to be right and fast, not wrong and fast. Oh, okay. Anyway, so with that, here's some, lots of free resources. Reach Andrea's.
Yeah, so my team, we're on the support side, so if you reach out directly to us, it's us, specifically on live chat. I think it's your morning and our afternoon. If you see, ask us anything, that's actually us. It's not a robot. Feel free to say hello. Ask us your questions, and we'll try to get you the right resources. Also, a big thing is our FME community. That's you guys, but it's also us, of course, as well as our partner team. Ask your questions there. We're monitoring the questions, so we always see if someone's asked a question and not received a response, and we try our very best to get you a response or try to get working with you so that you can start solving your problems again.
And if we're not there, Takashi's there.
That's
Takashi
also there.
is a one-man machine who answers. Anybody been on our? Yeah, it's amazing. We always bring him to the user conference. He's super guy, and I think he's retired, and he just is an FME guru who just answers things. A super nice guy, super smart. Lets us know when we've messed up too, which is really great. So,
but of course, there's always the partners too.
Yeah.
There's also your local partners as well. So reaching out to them, they're a great resource. And as I said earlier, if it's a problem with the product, they'll bring it to us for sure. Or if it's adding new formats such as 12D and the Apache Kafka connector, they'll reach out to us, and we'll start our investigation and find out that a lot of people want this stuff. It's not just John asking for no reason.
And we touched on some ways to procure FME, the new pay-as-you-go, but here I'm not going to go into them. But reach out to us and reach out to Locus on there. They're one of our premier platinum partners. They didn't really sell themselves enough, but I don't travel halfway around the world just for any partner, right? So they're special. Yeah. So Yeah, and this is the beginning of, I like to say to people, this is the beginning of the dialogue. Like really we mean it. Tell us what you don't like. We know the thing has, is broken, it's got bugs, but tell us where we can be better, right? Because we really get up every morning and we get excited about how can we make it better? How can we make it better, right? And without the feedback from you on how we can make it better, we're kind of guessing in the dark. We're smart people. We can guess in the dark and fix things that nobody cares about, but it's so much better to fix things that people care about.
Yeah, we build the product and you guys build your solution, so you're the ones who are using it, so we love hearing from you guys.
Yeah. Great, thank you.